Okay, so the way we've been building up to this, think back to 2 or 3 classes ago. And we talked about the importance of goal setting. And I'm not going to go through a long lecture on goal setting right now or anything, because I think we've covered that sufficiently. And I think you know what goals are. And I think you know that it doesn't matter what my goals are, it matters what your goals are. And it doesn't even matter what goal I set for you. It's how you're the one that has to figure out how to carry something out. You know what's involved. You know, if you have kids, spouses, parents, whatever the case may be, that require additional attention. And whatever goes on, you guys know that. I don't. So you set your goals. So now you've got your goals set. The next thing that we went over is we went over putting together a productive schedule. And we got some help from Tony Smith on that. And his productive schedule had you going to work at 7:30 in the morning and finishing up about 6 o'clock at night, and every hour accounted for. Well, I've been in real estate for a really long time, and I don't know that any of my days have been able to be that nailed down. There's always something that happens that's going to change that weekly schedule, that monthly schedule, whatever. We have this thing in real estate, and it's kind of funny because when we talk about why we get into real estate, some people say, well, I want to make money, I want to help people, I want to see houses. And one of the ones that always comes up is time flexibility. Well, I want to be more flexible with my time. Well, you know what? You have that flexibility. It goes back to your schedule, though, your calendaring. I still have 4 kids. None of them are at home anymore, but I still have 4 kids. And my kids were as involved as every family is. You know, I had boys that would, they were into sports and soccer, and one was into singing and heavy into choir things. I have a couple of daughters. One was heavy into theater and dance. The other was a cheerleader. We went to a lot of stuff, and it started early. And when I say we, I mean we. It was not my wife's responsibility. She might be responsible to get them to the game or get them to the theater or get them to the whatever. But as a father, it was my responsibility to make sure that I was there to support and just watch them and participate in their lives. So that was the flexibility that came on. I would talk to my kids, and we would do this at the dinner table. And it was like, okay, so what you got going on this week? Well, I have this, I have that. This is on Tuesday at 5:30. This is at 7 o'clock at night. I have a band concert. No, they weren't in band. Never mind. I have a choir concert or something. And they would go through and we would outline that whole thing. And from there, I would put together my schedule, what I was going to do on a daily basis to accomplish the things that I needed to accomplish. All right, well, this interferes with that, but my kids are more important than that. So I would make those changes, and there were a couple of times, more than a couple of times, especially with my young son, but there were a couple of times where my kids were in the office with me. Not a bunch of little kids running around or anything like that, but when they were old enough to come in here to do their homework or come into the office to do their homework, they would come in and they'd sit down and work on their homework and raid my snack machine and my soda machine and things and sit there and be perfectly okay in the other room doing their work. All right, so the point is that we can work around all those things, which still gives us that time flexibility. But in calendaring, you calendar your life's most important things first. And we want you to work. We want you to be able to make a good living, but we want you to have somebody to spend it on, which is going to be your kids and family. All right, so that being the case, Carolyn just downloaded today's handout, which we're not going to go through piece by piece, although we will be covering all those things. The handout was basically to reference what Mike Ferry and Tony Smith were going to talk to us about. But we're gonna kind of go along those same lines. So we've gotten that, we've done our thing, we've calendared, we've done our productive schedule for the day. And out of that productive schedule, there was a time that we assigned to prospecting. And from that prospecting, whatever that prospecting was, maybe the time that you did prospecting was Saturday from 10 to 2 because you did an open house and you walked the neighborhood ahead of time. Maybe it was making a phone call or two to your database. Maybe it was filling out postcards and calendar things to send them out to people. Whatever it was, you did some prospecting things, and voila, from that prospecting, you have a chance to go out and talk to somebody about potentially listing their home. I think I told you yesterday when we were talking that I was at a New Year's Eve get together and we started talking just in general across the table and around the food, and somebody asked if I was still doing real estate, which I was kind of ashamed. Not ashamed that I was still doing real estate. I was ashamed that he didn't know that anyway. But it was nice that he knew it. I sold him a house a really long time ago, and then they moved out of the area, and then they moved back to the area. And anyway, so I've had a couple of dealings with them, but they've been friends kind of all along, at least acquaintances that we get together with once or twice a year. And when the question comes out that says, are you still in real estate? It's kind of like you go, oh man, how does somebody not know that I'm in real estate? And whose fault is that? And it comes back on me. It was my fault that I evidently dropped the ball somewhere in keeping in contact with them or whatever the case may be. But I am still in real estate. Am I in it as actively as I was before? No. Am I still licensed? Yes. Can I still sell real estate? Yes. And but now I have that flexibility that we were talking about a minute ago to either work with those folks or to put them in touch with one of the agents in one of the offices that I think might be able to help them as well as I could. And that's the thing that we're looking for anywhere. How do I help you? How do I take care of you? So once we got to that point, we had to set up an appointment time, right? And I said, why don't, instead of doing that right now, because I don't have my calendar in front of me, that's a little bit of a lie because I have my calendar on my phone. But I said, why don't I call you tomorrow and we'll set up a time that we can get together. Oh, that'd be great. That'd be great. And then as we left the whole party and things, and Doug says, so are you going to give us a call tomorrow? And I said, absolutely. And I did. And I called him the next day. And then here's where you go from there. All right, you get the scenario so far. We're walking through this thing. I called Doug and I say, okay, how's Thursday actually it's Friday at 3 and things. So how's Friday at 3? Well, that works. Blah, blah, blah. We go through the conversation. And I said, what I'd like to do is, have you got like 5 or 6 minutes right now to just talk to me on the phone? And he said, oh yeah, of course. And I said, okay, so I want to talk to you about your house. Because if I can prepare some things ahead of time that make sense, then we will be that much further along when I actually come out. And it will give me a better feel for what we need to do price-wise and everything else. So this is called, and we do this all the time with buyers, we do pre-qualifying, right? You've heard that over and over and over again. Pre-qual, pre-qual, pre-qual. And pre-qualifying with a buyer is obviously to set somebody up with a lender and find out what they actually qualify for, and then pre-qualify them further by finding out what kind of property they want, and then pre-qualifying them further by finding out how soon they have to make that purchase. And we move through all those pre-qualifying questions. And there are a bunch of pre-qualifying questions that we should ask a seller when we're getting ready to go through the process. And those are in your little handout. I guess I should have put it up here on the board, but I didn't. See what happens when we have to scramble. Carolyn tries to take care of all these things, and And then I goof around and it doesn't work out right, or Mike Ferry goofs around and it doesn't work out right, but. Anyway, somewhere in your, I was looking to see where it was on the pages, but there are some pre-qualifying questions in there. And they're important questions to get answered. One of the first ones that we always like to get answered is, have you been talking to or working with any other realtors? It's an important thing to know when you're working with somebody. I was talking with an agent yesterday in Oceanside. I was down there. And they have an appointment set up for this Friday. And their appointment this Friday is at whatever time they set up. And there are two other agents that are going to be there. They're in the middle. There's going to be one in front of them and one behind them. But they know that there are two other agents working on getting this listing. So they're competing against a couple of people. Great things to know. Am I going to do it a whole lot different? I don't know. I guess, one of the things that we did was we looked up how good those agents were. Now, am I going to say, well, this is a lousy agent, you want to go with them? No, I'm not going to say anything derogatory because obviously that's an ethical violation. 10.5 in our code of ethics talks about being derogatory to other agents. So I'm not going to say that. Can I say the things that I think I can do better? Yes, I can do that. Oh, okay. But I can't say, oh, well, they're just a little office. They're not going to be able to give you very much support. He hasn't sold very many deals this year. She's got kids at home, and so she's not going to be able to devote the time that I can. We can't say anything like that. Not that any of you would, because those are stupid things to talk about. The things that we need to talk about are the things that I can do, the things that Century 21 can do, the things that my support system can do, the things that I can and will do better without saying that I'm better than them. Does that make sense? If you lay enough things out and you talk to them about enough things, then you overcome that competition thing right off the bat. If I can tell you all that I can do for you, and then the next guy comes in or the next gal comes in and she does not tell me at least those things. And the other thing is that now it's implanted in their minds, right? Greg told me he was going to do this and this and this and this and that. And so then the next agent that comes in, if they don't say those, then they're going to say, well, the other agent that was in here said they would do this. Are you going to do that? And so if you understand where I'm coming from, at least if you know there's another agent in there, you know what you have to do to start out with. Now, I've gone out on listing presentations in my life, a lot of them. And sometimes it's a numbers guy. I know the person, all they want to know is how much to sell the house for, how long it's going to take to sell, what are their proceeds at the end. And that's what they want to know. So if I went out there with no more information than that, they would still list with me because they know me, because we've worked together in the past, maybe, where who knows the situation. But for some reason, we know where we're coming from, and it's a numbers thing. So that person is going to get a little bit different presentation than somebody that I'm going out to and competing against other people. So those presentations, those listing presentations will change. They'll be modified according to what it is you're going to do. But I want to know if I'm dealing against anything else. So is it bad to ask if somebody's working with, do you have any other agents that you'll be interviewing? Do you have any other agents that you've been working with? And they will tell you. That's not one of those things that they're going to lie about or anything like that. So they may lie on other things, but they're not going to lie about that. So then one of the next qualifying questions after I know whether or not I'm competing with other people is if I can show you my plan, show you my listing presentation, we can agree on a price, then are you guys ready to list today? And the reason I want, well, maybe not today, we have to think about it a little bit. So I know that right off the bat. I know that I'm going to have to do more to impress them than I might otherwise. So what I really want to know is I want to know how soon they're going to list. And this one that I was telling you about that I'm going out on Friday. It worked backwards a little bit because when I was talking to them, they said that Lori, the wife, retires in May. And they'd like to be able to make that move around May. And I said, so that's good news. Okay, so it's gonna take us right now days on the market for well-priced homes. And I throw in words like that, like well-priced or priced right or something like that. But properties like that will probably take somewhere between 37 and 51 days to sell on the market. That's the average. You may go quicker than that. You may be a little longer than that. But 37 to 51 days in your neighborhood. Now you have to look at your specific neighborhoods to find out how true those numbers are, but in this neighborhood, that's where it was. So if we take that, let's take the long side of it. Let's take 51 days. And then let's take May when you want to be moving and back up 51 days. So now we've covered April and we've covered half of March, right? Give or take a day or two. And it's going to take us about 30 to 45 days once we're in escrow to close escrow. So now that takes us back through March and into February. So when do we need to get this house marketed? When do we need to sell this house? Well, I have a photographer lined up to go out there on Friday at the same time I'm there. And so we're pushing forward like it's all going to happen. Of course, like I said, I know these people, so it's a little bit of an advantage, but we need to move fairly quickly in order to meet their timelines. So I need to know what their timelines are. They may say, well, you know what? We want to sell our house and we want to move to wherever. And but we want, but our daughter really wants to graduate from the high school she's at. She's a cheerleader there. They've got an active spring competition schedule set up and things. And so we really don't want to do anything until, we don't want to move until after June. Okay, so do you not want to put your house on the market till June? Or do you want to be prepared to move in June? Oh, well, we could put it on the market before that. All right, let's go through that same scenario. Back it off for time in escrow, time to sell, and figure out what day we need to do to sell the house and get the house in escrow and things somewhere near the dates that they want. It's an important thing to know. So we want to know their timing. It also helps us to know their motivation when we're asking those questions. Well, you know, Terry, it really doesn't matter. I mean, we're happy there, you know, it doesn't really matter if we sell. We just thought with prices being higher than they have been in a while. We hear that on the news and we hear that from other people. And so with prices being a little higher and stuff, we just thought we'd see what we could do. So, you know, if we could get $750,000 out of it, then we'd move. And so that's now I know a number, okay? I know something that they're thinking about. Now, when this is all in that preliminary conversation, that 10-minute conversation I'm having with them on the phone. But now I know those times and I know those numbers. And so when I go to do my CMA, my market analysis, I know those numbers that they're working with up front. I know that they're thinking 750. Now, is that going to be possible? I don't know until I get on the MLS and get with title and try to find out what things have sold there in the last little while. But I move in that direction. So I move in the direction of finding out whether or not we can hit their numbers. But at least I know that number, don't I? Right off the bat, I know that number. And so now I have a date, an approximate date or time. I know whether or not they're working with other agents. Because are there agents that'll come in with that number no matter what? And the answer is yes. There are agents that it doesn't matter. If they say they want 750, they'll do 750, even if it's only worth 650. And I don't want to be that agent because all that does is frustrate it and drag everything out and make our dates go somewhere else and make me look like a bad agent and everything. I'm not going to take, if 750 is their absolute bottom line, and I cannot see 650 in it, and maybe that's too big of a span, maybe it should be 700, but if I can't see that number happening some magical way, then I may not be the right person to take that listing. And I need to not be afraid to tell them that. You don't have to fire them after the fact. You can just say, ooh, gosh, Doug, I don't think we can get that much. This is where all the comps are coming in, blah, 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 blah. And you have all of the printed material to show them. And you go through all those things and you tell them exactly where they fit in this whole thing. And let them know what their net would be if they sold it at your price. Because that net may be, oh, I didn't know we'd get that much out of it. I thought it would cost us more to sell it or something like that. Well, maybe it will. Maybe you'll have to do termites. Maybe you'll have to do repairs. Maybe there are things that have to be done. But what I'm trying to do in this seller's qualifying 10 minutes or something is feel them out as far as all these things go. We have to do some work on the house. We're in the process of getting it painted. We're in the process of putting in new carpet. We want to do this. We want to do that. We want it to show good from the curb. Well, I'm glad you want all those things because every one of those things help. But some of those things may not be necessary. And some of those things may be totally unnecessarily because of the fact that they may want to replace carpet and the people that are moving in may rather have a carpet allowance. They may rather have a flooring allowance. Maybe they don't even want carpet. Maybe you're going to pick the wrong color. Maybe they would rather do wood or laminate or something or tile or something. Who knows? So sometimes it's important to know those things. Well, let's not spend a lot of money there yet. Let's take a look at it and see if we have some alternatives. So we have gotten down to kind of the nitty-gritty a little bit. Now we're going to talk to them about a couple of things that are a little more personal than that. And that is that how much do you currently owe on the property? And why is that an important number to know? Well, it's an important number to know because when I do a net sheet, I would like to do a net sheet or have my escrow officer do a net sheet that shows us something close to what it's actually going to be at the end. And it gives us a chance to include everything. We had one happen a couple of days ago with an agent that totally did not think about the fact that it was an investment property and that there would be capital gains taxes and that there would be a 3 1/3 tax holdout in escrow and things. So the numbers that they had written on their sheet didn't include those things. And we didn't have enough time to change them at that point in time because they'd already talked to the people. So now the people are kind of expecting one. And then we have to make that call back to them saying, oh, I forgot to include the fact that 3 1/3 is going to be withheld because it's an investment property. So that'll be held out of your proceeds. So it's a $700,000 property. So 3 1/3 is going to be held out. So that means approximately $24,000 less on your proceeds. Well, what do you mean held out? Well, it gets held out and it gets applied to your state taxes. And then you can work it out then with your accountant. So, but do I at least know that now? And do they at least know that now? And am I giving them more accurate net proceeds than I would be if I didn't know that kind of information? Do I know that their payoff, we're selling for 700, they have a loan in place or a couple of loans that add up to maybe 550 or 420 or whatever it happens to be. But I know those numbers ahead of time and I know what they need to get the house that they're trying to buy or where they're trying to move or whatever. So how much do you owe on this property is not an unreasonable question. And then this is kind of a funny question, but this is like a Mike Ferry special. Okay, this question. And he says, after he's gone through some of these things and made it sound like there's a lot of work involved in selling the property. He asks the question, have you ever thought about selling the property yourself? And it's kind of one of those questions where it gives people pause just to think about whether or not they thought about and then they'd say, well, what would be the advantage of that? And then, of course, you can say, well, I don't think there's an advantage to that. But some people feel like saving the money that you would pay me to be your realtor might be worth it to them. And I just wanted to make sure that we were on the same page. Oh, no, I wouldn't do this without a realtor. Okay. Then my next question also has to do with financing, and that is that would you consider, because it makes a difference sometimes, and it depends on the property. Okay, so let me back up just 10 seconds here. And that is if you're in a really unique property situation, maybe you're in some kind of a rural community, maybe there's a lot of land involved in the sale, maybe there's other things going on. So there might be a case where a lender will not see the entire value in the sale of a home, but they will see the value in maybe 80% of it. And so would you, the seller, be willing to consider any seller financing terms? And that helps you when you're putting it in the MLS, and it helps you with your marketing and things, because if they will consider doing a carryback on some of the dollar amount, then that gives you something again right up front. Now, we're taking a long time to discuss these things. It's a lot longer than you'll discuss them when you're on the phone with them and things, but it's just an interesting thing to throw out there. And they may think about it overnight. And when you get out there Friday or tomorrow, whenever your appointment is set up, you may get out there and they go, tell me a little more about that seller financing thing. And then you can kind of go through some of the seller financing information. And seller financing works in a lot of different ways. For one thing, it can work because the property has a hard time appraising to fully finance. The other thing is that sometimes there are sellers that don't want their money all at once, and they want to carry back paper because they pay their taxes accordingly, and they know their capital gains is going to be extremely high because they bought it for $100,000 and it's worth $700,000, or it's worth $1 million or something, and they're only qualified for the $250,000 exemption, which means they have a $500,000 capital gains. And all of a sudden, they're having to pay $100,000 in taxes. But if I sell it a little more slowly, then I don't have that tax hit all at once. And again, all of that would go through an accountant and things. You guys wouldn't be the practicing finance person on all of those things. So don't get panicked about those issues, but just make people aware that they do exist. And then just ask them to describe their home for you. Well, it's 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. We've done a lot of extra things to the house. Well, what kind of extra things? Well, we put in granite countertops instead of the old ceramic tile, and we put in this, and we redid the kitchen cupboards, and we have new appliances throughout, and their enthusiasm about the home is going to help you when you get there, because when you get there, I mean, if they tell you that it's a real piece of junk and it needs a lot of work and that's why they're moving, then what do you go out there looking for? You go out there looking for a real piece of junk that needs a lot of work, and what do we need to do to get it moving and things. So their enthusiasm when they're describing their home helps you understand what their feelings are a little bit with regards to selling it. And it also gives you a tool, whether you know it or not, is those things are important to them. So I want to make sure that I mention it when I go in, right? When I'm in the house and I'm looking around. And I heard them say that they love the fact that they have a floor to ceiling river rock fireplace with a beautiful walnut mantle. Well, I can look for that and I can bring it up in my conversation. Now, what does that tell me? Is that like blowing smoke up their pant leg or anything like that. No, what it tells them is it tells them that I listened to what they told me. I paid attention to what they told me. And you know that most of our listing presentation, and we're going to go over that, I think maybe next time or soon anyway, is that we want to hear what they have to say. We want to acknowledge what they have to say. We want to remind them of what they had to say. So you said you really like this. Okay, you know what? That's okay. So you've listened to them, you've heard them, you've responded to them, you've given them an additional reason to trust that you're a person that will actually listen to what's important. All right, so the next thing, and a lot of people don't do this. In fact, just even this part that we've gone through so far, and it sounds pretty easy. You're going to do it in about 10 minutes. Your list of questions are in your packet. So you're going to go over it and you'll put your own fluff to it. You'll put your own words to it and things. It's not scripted questions, but it kind of is. You know, it's written down in a way that you can say, when do you plan on moving? Are you working with other agents? How much do you owe on the home? So they're basic questions, but they're things that you can put your own personality to it and things. So it's not something that's so sentence after sentence after sentence. And the other thing is if you find yourself going sentence after sentence after sentence, you're going to miss some of what they say. And so you need to ask the question and then give them time to answer it. And then if you have to, go back and say, okay, so this is what you're saying, and it reinforces what it is that you say. But more importantly, it reinforces that you listen to them. And they're going to be looking for that person that actually listens to them. They're not going to be looking for the person that just shows up on the doorstep on the day they have their appointment and has a bunch of numbers in their hands and says, I think we should sell your house at $700,000, and has nothing to go with. So all of this pre-qualifying thing gives you extra ammunition. So then the next thing you can do, and this is if you want to be a good lister and a good presenter at the time and things, is that in a few days, I told you that we were going to go over a listing presentation and things, and we will do that. But you put together your listing presentation ahead of time. And your listing presentation is going to include like your market analysis. It's going to include maybe a little bit about you, maybe a little bit about Century 21, maybe a little bit about the market in the area, maybe a little bit about whatever it is that you put together as your listing presentation. And you have pretty free wheel at that. You can do just about whatever you want with it. But you put that listing presentation together, including the comps, the market analysis, and you get it over to their house sometime before your listing presentation day. So if I'm going out Friday at 3:00, then I'm already going to have my market analysis done. In fact, I already emailed it to them. I did a market analysis on RPR and showed them what, but I, in the comments section, I said, based on a lengthy evaluation of title company information and the MLS, it looks the best pricing of your house will be, and this is not 700,000, it's more like 480, but $480,000. Now, does that mean that that's in gold? No, I mean, we can, we can talk about that when I get there. But I make sure that I mention that it's based on an evaluation of information from the title company and the MLS. And it is subject to looking at the home and determining condition. And so then they know right off the bat, and it depends on how into selling they are, but they're going to make sure the house is clean when I get there. They're going to make sure that things are picked up probably. If they don't, if they just let me stumble in, if I have to step over a skateboard and 2 scooters to get to the front door, and then when I walk in, I've got a dog that jumps up on me and things. It's a different impression, isn't it? So I let them know that by giving them paperwork ahead of time, what the house looks like it would be worth. And then I can put on there that we'll do some further adjustments when I get there and actually see what you've done. I sent this one out to them day before yesterday. And they, one of the first things I got, I know they got it because after they got it, I got back a text that said, "Oh, thanks for sending us the information, Terry, but these aren't the photos." And so gave me an opportunity to call them and say, "Oh, I know that's in the MLS. It provides a photo in RPR. It provides a photo history. And so when you bought the house, this is what it looked like. And I know it'll look different now because I know some of the work that you've done. And my photographer will be there Friday. And we'll retake pictures and things." Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure we weren't using the same photos because we've done a lot of work to the house. Hortensia, you have a thought?
Yes, a couple, quick question. Remind me, what is RPR?
Okay, that's a good question. RPR is a fancy CMA website that's available in the MLS. So you go to the MLS and you know how it has on your dashboard, it has like Matrix and all of those things, InfoSparks and things like that. One of the items on there is Realtor Property Report, RPR. And if you click on RPR, then right at the very top, it asks you for the address of the property. And you type in the address of the property that you're going to go to. And it gives you information on that property. It pulls it from title or the MLS or wherever. And it tells you that it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,700 square foot, whatever it is. And then from there, it asks you if you want to create a CMA. And if you do, you click on CMA. And then, and you'll be surprised when the CMA comes out. And the reason you'll be surprised is because actually it can be as much as, well, I think I've looked down the list of different reports that you can get. And I think if you really wanted to fill somebody's trash can, or maybe give them information. But I think the largest report in there is 81 pages. But the templates are already kind of in place, and all it does is plug in your addresses and your CMAs and things like that. And it does all that work for you. Okay, that's a great question. And it's just through the MLS.
Okay, very good. And then my next question, you talked about pictures in the CMA, there'll be pictures. But are we allowed to use those when someone else took them?
We are not allowed to use them for marketing.
Okay.
We can't use them and say, this is what the house looks like or anything. So we are not allowed to use it in our marketing. But the information that's on RPR, which is public information, would be available to other people. And it's okay to use that. But you're not going to use those. If you take the listing, you're not going to use any of those pictures for the listing. You're going to do all your own.
Thank you.
That's a great question. Because we cannot use everybody else's pictures. Yes. They're either licensed by the agent who paid for them, or by the photographer that took them, or by the MLS themselves. And so we're not allowed to use any of those. We can only use ones that we take ourselves or that we have taken and pay for. Okay?
Thank you.
Cool, good question. All right. So you get that information out to them ahead of time, and they have a chance to review it a little bit and look over it, and they go, oh, well, he thought the house would only sell for 480. We were hoping to get 510 out of it. Well, now that process is already going on in their mind, and I'm aware that that's what's going to come out of it anyway. And I make sure that I include a net sheet in that paperwork, and I go to escrow to get my net sheets. And the reason I do that is because it does a couple of things. For one thing, it's a little more accurate than me trying to think of numbers and pull out my little pamphlet from the title company that says what the title fee will be and things like that. It's a little more accurate than all that. But the other thing is is that I want to show them right off the bat that I'm already working for them. You know, this isn't something I sat down and did in 10 minutes and then popped over here to see you. Because 80% of the agents out there are going to be doing that. 80% of the agents are not going to go through a seller's questionnaire up front to see what things are important to them. They're not going to be providing them with a CMA or any other information about the properties in the area up front. They're not going to be doing any of that. You will be special. You will show them that you've put energy and effort into it before you even go meet. And that is, I mean, think of it. Wouldn't it be impressive to you? Now, I know you're a realtor, but it wouldn't be impressive to you if somebody took the time to do some work before they even had an agreed contract or anything? It shows them right off the bat that you're up for the job. All right, so that's it. Are there any questions? This isn't me asking questions. That's not the end of the class, okay? Don't everybody run off. It's not what I meant by that's it. But then you ask them on the telephone if they have any questions that they might like to ask now, or if they'd like to have answered when I arrive. Well, we want to talk to you about commissions. Okay, perfect. Let's talk about that when I get there. And you can just move them. Is that okay with you? Because I don't like to discuss them until we've nailed down some of these other things like prices and condition and things like that. So that'd be okay with you? That'd be one of the very first things we cover if you want. Okay, I guess I can wait till that. Question may never come up again, but at least you acknowledged it at the time. It wasn't a blow off. Anyway, now and then you leave them with, I'm really excited to come and see you on Friday. And I hope we can work something out on pricing and things. But I just want to let you know that I'm only anticipating that the meeting is going to take between maybe 20 and 45 minutes. So is that okay? And then the very last thing you answer or ask is that it says on the title that Doug and Lori are both on title. Will both Doug and Lori be there? Will everybody that needs to sign be there? Will everybody that needs to ask questions be there? Now, I'm just being repetitive. You're probably not going into it in that detail because they may give you a quick yes or no answer. But from your standpoint, you want to make sure that everybody is there that's supposed to be there. Because I don't want to have to do this presentation again tomorrow. Because today, one of the people had to work late. I would rather let them know at that time, if everybody can't be there at 3 o'clock Friday, then let's schedule a time when everybody can be there. Would Saturday morning be better? Would Saturday afternoon be better? Would Thursday night be better? Would Friday night be better? Would it be better if I came after dinner? I may have to do that occasionally in my life, but the point is that we want to make sure that anybody who is going to be a decision maker on that and a signer is going to be there, because I don't want to do this over and over. And I don't want to get the phone call the next day saying, okay, well, my wife got home from work late, but she wanted to know about the blah, blah, and the blue, and the whatever. And now we're going through this whole thing again, where if we could have done it all at once, all the questions could have come forward. They could have had their pillow talk at night if they needed to, and everything would be done. So we want to make sure our very last question is everybody going to be there? And that's if we haven't gotten it answered already somewhere along the line. And then you just leave them with a reaffirmation of the time. I look forward to meeting with you guys Friday at 3 o'clock. Please call me if anything changes. Here's my phone. 951-551-4714. All right, so we've kind of cleared up everything. They have the presentation. They have everything they need to at least ask me questions. And I want to do that. I want to be able to answer all the questions up front, but I've done that as a result of the seller's pre-qualification. I haven't done that as a result of anything else. If I hadn't done that, we would be getting all of those questions thrown at us or asked or answered or whatever while we're sitting there. And I want to let you know, this is something that I've thought for a long time and I've preached it for a long time. I hope I don't sound too much like a preacher, but anyway, you actually sell a home when you list it. And that sounds a little funny because no, you don't. The people have to come and see it and all that kind of stuff. I understand all that. But if you've done a good job in your listing of explaining all of the things that you need to explain, of answering all the questions that they have, of coming up with a price range that creates interest and exposure and things, if all of those things fall into place when you list it, then that will sell the property. Do I sell properties? No, not really. I don't go out there and try to talk them into something that they don't want. That's not my job. I don't go out there and show you every car on the car lot type thing because one doesn't work and this and might and thing. That's not my job. My job is to say, so here's this home that you wanted to see. It has what you were looking for. It has 3 bedrooms. It has 2.5 bathrooms. It's 1,900 square feet. It's a single story. It has RV parking. And I can talk about those things. Those are going to be in my listing presentation, but I can talk about all those things as I go along. But did I sell a house? No, the house sold the house. The husband and the wife or the partners or the investors or whoever it was that was involved in it, they looked through the house and regardless of what I said, they'll buy it or not buy it, no matter what I said. So I don't sell the house. I just point out features. Hopefully I point out features in my MLS. Hopefully I point out features in my flyers, in my advertising, in any marketing that I do. And I point out features, but I'm not selling a house. But if I listed it right, and I presented it right, and I put together the marketing right, then that sells the house when you list it. So just think about that. So the first things that you want to do, obviously you want to, and we talked about this a minute ago, but I'm going to just recap real quick. First thing you want to do is determine their motivation. You know, how soon do you need to be gone? Really, do you want to sell? Do you need to sell? Is this something that you have to do? Well, no, we don't really have to, but we just thought we'd take advantage of high prices. Well, that's a reason to sell. Now, how motivating is that? I don't know. It depends on what you can price it at, because if you can still get it in the marketplace, then that's a good enough reason. But if you can't, then obviously that's a way out. But so determine their motivation. Get all those questions that we talked about and others that you might have because you know the specific people, you know their situation, you know what's going on. Get all of those things figured out ahead of time. We have one right now. I'm not going to throw names out or anything like that, but we have got one in one of the offices going on right now where there's a sister and 2 brothers that live in the property. It was left to them by family and everybody wanted to sell. And everybody signed on the listing agreement and things, put it on the market. It went into escrow. And now everything's falling apart in the eyes of the brothers and the sisters and all that stuff. And our agent actually had an appointment to go over there the other day and she walked in on a fist fight between the sister and the brother. It wasn't even the 2 brothers. It was a sister and a brother. And it was a literal knockdown, drag out fist fight. And she didn't know what to do. She called me. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Call 911?
Yeah, I guess that's right. Anyway, and so they had the conversations finally, I guess, but right now we're still in limbo. It was supposed to close last Friday. That still hasn't happened. They still haven't gotten moved out. There's things going on. Well, I want to avoid all those things ahead of time. I want to avoid all those things forever. That's why I want everybody involved. Who's involved in this? Do you all want to sell? Is there any reason that you wouldn't want to sell? Well, if we don't get the right price, we don't. Okay, well, what's the price? Let's see if we can start there. So you move through these things, but you have to move through them up front. If you don't move through them up front, then you have issues down the road. So let's see. Let me see what we can do to wrap up here so you can all go to work. I think we've covered everything on the, other than me showing you a video that I can't show you. So just remember what I said a minute ago, and that is that you sell the house when you list it. And the other thing to remember is that you should, and I'm just telling you this as advice, you're your own people, so you can do what you want. But you should pre-qualify sellers every single time, 100% of the time. Do I tell you to pre-qualify buyers 100% of the time? Yes. When you pre-qualify a buyer, you need to find out whether they can get that home. You need to find out if they can qualify for a loan, if they have the money in the bank, if they have the money in a retirement. Whatever it is, we need to find that out. Same thing with a seller. Let's find out all the things, because we may not want to take the listing just because of all of the caveats that they put on it that are going to be a total conflict to selling the house. I don't want to fight all the way through this transaction. If I fight all the way through the transaction, there's a better than 50% chance that it's going to fall apart. So let's solve all these things to start out with. Let's salve all the wounds. Let's make sure everybody involved is involved. And it's going to be a lot easier for us. And you'll get a lot more of the listings that you go out on, because you will have done a lot more ahead of time than most agents do. Okay? So with that in mind, if there are no questions, I'm going to let you go to work.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you. Thanks for participating.
Thank you, Terry.
Of course.
you.
How are
Thank you.
Talk to you soon. Call me if you need me. I'm around.